Vanishing Point is the final track on my new all-original prog rock album, Suspension of Disbelief. Well, original is a relative term. While the compositions are my own, this project was inspired by my recent video exploring 10 prog rock albums that shaped my musical tastes in high school and college. If you haven't checked out that video yet, here's a link. Suspension of Disbelief is structured like that pair of classic Yes albums, Close to the Edge and Relayer, with one long suite on side A and a pair of shorter but still long tracks on side B. The suite on side A is inspired by 6 bands I discovered in high school, and the 2 side B tracks by 4 bands I got into in college. The Vanishing Point is the final track, but it's the first one I recorded. Why? It just felt right. I composed the tracks in the order they'll appear on the album, so I'm recording them in reverse. Also, I'm waiting on some new gear that I really need for the first track. More to come on that. But for now, let's check out The Vanishing Point, and then stick around for an in-depth analysis. The music theory hat will be there. Overview of The Vanishing Point. The Vanishing Point is split into two parts. The first, inspired by Canterbury supergroup National Health, is called Follow-Up to Rock Bottom. The second, inspired by the French prog fusion band Magma, is called Ancient Dust. These two parts are complementary in a way that I feel matches these two bands' subgenres, Canterbury and Zeuhl. Even though both are among the most jazzy areas of the prog rock landscape, Canterbury is usually light, upbeat, and quirky, almost to the point of being goofy. In contrast, Zeuhl is dark, ominous, and very self-serious, which is its own kind of goofy if you don't buy into the conceit. But that's the essence of all prog rock, isn't it? The juxtaposition of the two styles is somewhat representative of how I'm feeling in the world today. I want to be light, upbeat, and quirky, but current events are dark and ominous. That may be the true reason I'm tackling this track first. If for some reason I don't get around to finishing the whole album, this one feels like the most important artistic statement to get out there. Time to put on the music theory hat and dive into the composition. The National Health track that most directly influenced Follow-Up to Rock Bottom was the Bryden two-step for Amphibians Part 1 from Of Cues and Cures. It was composed by Dave Stewart. No, not that Dave Stewart. The Dave Stewart of such classic Canterbury groups as Egg, Hatfield in the North, and of course, National Health. It's a classic Dave Stewart composition in that it has a number of surprising twists and turns. It's full of jazzy harmonies and really takes advantage of the full range of sonic textures available with National Health's instrumentation. My composition borrows a lot of these ideas in a respectful homage to the original, hopefully not straying too close to direct imitation. At this point, it's probably good to pause and talk for a minute about those drums. I am not a drummer. I sometimes hit things rhythmically with sticks or my hands. I'm able to play a few basic beats on a drum set, and I can plunk out semi-interesting patterns on drum pads. But I knew going into this that I would not be able to adequately recreate the complex, nuanced flair of the likes of my drum heroes whose work inspires the tracks on this album. Namely, and yes, I want to name them all, Neil Peart, Alan White, Nick Mason, Bill Bruford, Phil Collins, John Drumbo French, John Fishman, John Pugwash Weathers, Pip Pyle, and Christian Vander. The drummer I would be attempting to emulate here is Pip Pyle, drummer of Hatfield in the North and National Health, who, as I recall, but I couldn't find a source, was once described by a bandmate as playing like an octopus on amphetamines. Yeah, I can't do that. But what I can do is manipulate computers to do what I want. For several years, Logic has included a virtual drummer feature, which was created by having a few expert session drummers come in and play drum beats and fills in various styles. Their playing was captured with meticulous detail as MIDI data, which can then be manipulated with the virtual drummer, mixing and matching elements, adjusting the complexity and intensity, tweaking the level of swing, and the push or pull of the feel. The virtual drummer was further enhanced as part of the session player tools in Logic 11, which added keyboards and bass to the virtual rhythm section. I found these new additions to be useful compositional tools, although I never want to leave virtual keyboard or bass parts in my recordings because I can play those instruments adequately. Getting Zeuhl. Magma's first couple of albums explored a range of sounds before the band really found its signature style with the 1973 album Mechanic Destructive Commando. The follow-up 1974 album, Konterkosch, carried this style even further and firmly established a new subgenre that would eventually be called Zeuhl, after one of the terms in Magma's invented lyrical language, Kobayan. Incidentally, Zeuhl translates in English as celestial. Even though this is celestial music, it has an underworld feel to me. But then I get the same kind of mysterious afterlife vibe, thinking about both the underworld and the vast, cold darkness of deep space. I also get that same feeling about the distant past, and the story of Konterkosch is part of a trilogy of works that tie together Magma's mythology, from the pharaohs of ancient Egypt to the apocalyptic events of the band's debut album to a super being in the distant future. I mean, I guess. It's all in a made-up language, so there's some room for interpretation. Anyway, Konterkosch was the main inspiration for the second half of The Vanishing Point, which I'm calling Ancient Dust, after a phrase I came across in researching the story of the album. Magma's sound is dominated by the band leader, Christian Vander, who shout-sings with an almost operatic baritone, pounds forcefully on piano, and most notably, matches or surpasses Pip Pyle's Octopus on Amphetamines intensity on the drums. Although there's a strong connection to jazz, and particularly jazz fusion, in a lot of what Magma does, Kontarkosh is dominated by fuzz bass, a plodding yet relentless tempo, and eerie chords on electric piano, strings, and vocals. That style is what I attempted to emulate here. Heavy stuff, and a much different vibe than the National Health inspired sounds that preceded it, but somehow I feel it all works. If you made it this far, congratulations, and thank you. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons, and check the links in the description for my Patreon and Bandcamp.